Hi there, this is Dr. Penelope Jones and from Working Posture, and this is a little thing on strategies for relieving pain. I've put them in two categories, either things you can do in the surgery or in the clinic or in the office, and things that you can do at home. So let's start with things that you can actually do in the office. The first one is finding the sweet spot, which I have demonstrated how to do in my working posture workshop. And the first thing is to start to put your arms up in front of you. And as you take your arms down and as you take your arms up, you feel the pelvis rolling forwards and backwards, just as in this picture. And then what you do is you reduce the amount that the pelvis goes forwards and backwards, reduce the timing, and finally get to the point right in the middle where suddenly your whole spine feels nicely balanced and it's got a feeling to it. So if you're in the clinic and you find you're getting a very sore neck, then you put your hands in front of your belly, take your knees wide apart and roll your pelvis a long way forward, make your front a lot longer, which is going into the forward position of finding the sweet spot. And when you've done that, you really stretch and then relax and let your pelvis come back into the sweet spot and find it again. And this I recommend you do again and again. You don't always need to put your hands in front of your belly. Just imagine it. But you can do this sitting behind a patient. You can do it sitting in front of your computer. And as I said before, when you hold your breath a lot, the rib cage gets very, very tight, which makes your whole torso tight. So you bring your hand up as you're here, and you stretch your hand towards the opposite side to the side your arm's on. And you take a big breath. You really lengthen that top side. Really take a breath and let the breath expand your lungs from the inside. And do that on both sides. And you'll find that it relaxes all of those intercostal muscles, which when they're tight, make the whole body tight, especially your neck. These are things that you could do sitting on a chair. This middle photo is putting your hands right over your head so the neck is supported and can't move, because I want the movement to happen where this red line is. So if we go to number 2, you do a movement of taking the elbows a little bit forwards and a little bit backwards, but make sure the movement happens where that red line is. So in fact, the ribs need to move. Very gently breathing in as you do it. And then come to number 3, where you take your elbows first to the left, then to the right, backwards and forwards, very, very gently, letting the movement be from where the red line is. So you find one side gets longer and the other gets shorter, and then vice versa. And then if you want to be really smart, you can go to number 4 and just turn left and turn right. Think of it like 6 is like a circle that you're in, but the turning happens just where that red line is. Take a deep breath and it should feel a lot better. The other way is to stand up against a wall with your back slightly arched. Let your belly be soft and loose, and take the back of your head up towards the ceiling, which means that your chin will tuck under a little bit, and it's basically giving you a big stretch at the back. Because unfortunately, when we're getting very concentrated, we tend to pull in on our front and the poor old back gets a little bit tight. Things to be done at home. The first one is if you get home and you've got a tight neck, lie down on the floor, find a spot on the ceiling, and keep looking at that gently as you take your head left and right. Get to the point where it feels like the head is falling to the side, falling to the side. And then very, very gently reduce the distance you go to the side. Make that slower and slower and smaller till you get to the point where you're not even sure whether you're moving or not. Then just close your eyes and your neck should feel a lot better. The next one is probably something that your personal trainer or gym instructor has probably told you. And you can either do it leaning on a chair or on the floor. But basically, you're taking your you're taking your back up towards the ceiling, tucking your pelvis under and looking down a little bit. Then you do the opposite by taking your belly down towards the floor, sticking your tail up and looking forward. Do this a few times and this will help to soften your back. The other thing is part of what we did when we were doing the exercise on opening up the shoulders. And it also comes into when you're sitting and it's enabling that pelvis to open up. So lie on the floor and then the first thing you do is you take your left knee forward, roll the weight towards the right side of your pelvis. So you don't actually lift the left side of your pelvis, it just gets lighter on the floor and you can feel the opening, like opening a hinge. Do that on one side and then do the opposite. Take your right knee forward, letting your right hip open at the front by rolling your pelvis to the left. It's just like a hinge opening. Now, for those of you who have sciatica, this is really, really important. Your piriformis muscle is halfway between your tailbone and the bump on the side of your hip bone. So feel those places and it's right in the middle of the buttock. And if it's tender, you'll see that it's quite tender. So you locate it and then you put your fingers into that and roll over onto your back and very gently roll your leg in and out, very gently. And with the pressure into the muscle, you'll find that it will start to let go. It's good to do this before you do the next exercise, which is unlocking the sacroiliac joint, because when the sacroiliac joint is tight, you get sciatica and the piriformis gets very tight as well. So to release the joint, to release the right joint, roll over onto your back, have your left leg long, bring your right knee up, hold onto it with your left hand. With your right hand, put your hand on the top of your hip so that the pelvis doesn't roll sideways. And the first thing you do is you take the knee towards the left shoulder, get to the point where it feels tight or a bit ouchy, and then just let it off a little bit. And do little circles with the knee, just lazily, and make sure that that leg is passive. It's not doing any work. It's the hand that does the work. And then the opposite side, you pick up the left knee with your right arm. Take it towards the right shoulder. Bring it towards the shoulder. Let it off a little bit when it gets a bit ouchy and just do little circles. Then take the knee again and you'll probably find that you can get it closer to that shoulder. Just keep doing that until you feel the joint opening at the back. There is another way to do this that's probably faster. You can see the arrow pointing to the sacroiliac joint, and you can see by sitting on your sit bones for too long, especially if the pelvis is rolled backwards, it's going to really jam that joint up. So you cradle your leg with one hand around the knee, almost like holding a baby, and the other hand over the top of the ankle. And what you're going to do is you're going to very gently push the whole leg away from you, but resist it with your hand. So you push the leg away, holding it still with the arm, so you're pushing it into your hands. Press it and release it. Press it and release it. Press it and release it. And then bring the leg a little bit closer to your chest and keep doing this until you feel that there's a lot more softness. First of all, you'll feel the stress in your hamstrings, then you'll feel it in your buttock, and then when it's very loose, you'll feel it a little bit underneath your lower back. So do both sides. It's a very easy thing to do. So to improve your core, what you're trying to do is to increase the functionality of your transverse abdominis and your multifidus. This is the combination that the Pilates people focus on. But what I do, which is in addition to what they do, is that I tell you that you must make sure that your pelvis doesn't roll forwards or backwards. Otherwise, you will engage the wrong muscle. So putting your hands underneath your lower back where that purple cone is, and make sure that the pelvis doesn't move. Then you're going to very, very gently, you're going to pull your tummy in and imagine the tummy going towards your spine. Then release it. It's a very soft muscle, but when it's used properly, it's actually quite strong because it has the multifidus to back it up. So lying on the back, your hands underneath your lower back, making sure your pelvis doesn't roll forwards or backwards. Very gently take that belly, take your tummy towards your spine, and then release it. Do that a few times. And the other way to help your core is also, this is quite an interesting thing, come down onto your hands and knees and finding the right position of your pelvis where you really can feel the core. Put one hand forward and the other opposite leg out the back and feel the core just behind your waist really taking effect. Now try and get the pelvis in the right position that helps, and you'll feel it. You'll know when you've got it right because you'll feel the core actually contracting. This is a great way to do it. Okay, so I hope you find this useful, and I hope that you find a way to do it often.